Robert Schumann was born in Zwickau in the Kingdom of Saxony, in the southeastern region of modern Germany, in 1810. Throughout the 1830s, nearly all of Schumann's compositions were for solo piano, many of them imbued with vivid, lucid depictions of extra-musical phenomena. This program music was among the chief characteristics of instrumental music in the 19th century, and Schumann was one of its first advocates, perhaps seeking to fuse the worlds of the musical and the literary. His piano suite Papillon, Opus 2, was intended to describe musically the events of a contemporary novel by the German author Jean Paul. Similarly, in the solo piano cycle Carnaval, Opus 9, Schumann sketched out in music all sorts of different people in his life, including himself, his fiancée at the time, his friend Frédéric Chopin, and the great violinist Niccolò Paganini, one of his earliest inspirations. His work as a writer and critic did not languish during this time. In 1834, Schumann co-founded, with his teacher Friedrich Wieck, the Neue Zeitschrift für Musik, New Journal for Music, in Leipzig, a journal in which he was able to give full expression to his musical thoughts and tastes. Here he published most of his own critical writings, many of which supported the composers he championed, such as Chopin and the iconoclastic French composer Hector Berlioz. Things soon went awry for Schumann and Wieck, however, when it became clear that the composer had fallen deeply in love with the young Clara Wieck. Her father sternly opposed any union between the two. As such, Schumann, finding neither rhetorical nor legal recourse around the elder Wieck's obstinacy, had to wait until Clara was old enough to marry without her father's consent in 1840. In the intervening years, Schumann produced much of his best-known piano music, such as the Fantasiestücke, Opus 12, and the Kinderszenen, Opus 15. These sets build on his earlier programmatic compositions, seeking to illustrate vividly literary conceptions in musical form. 1840 was a tremendous year for Schumann, and not only because he was finally able to marry Clara. While he had composed almost exclusively for solo piano up until this point, in 1840, Schumann wrote over 150 Lieder for voice and piano. Many of these are considered to be the pinnacle of the German art song. It seems as though Schumann the writer had suddenly discovered another way to feed his voracious literary appetites and to channel the highly literate world in which he had been raised. He set the words of the greatest German writers to music: Goethe, Heinrich Heine, Joseph von Eichendorff, Friedrich Rückert, and more. In addition to the explosion of Lieder, Schumann branched out into other genres after 1840, composing chamber music, symphonies, and works for solo instrument and orchestra. 3 of his 4 published symphonies were composed in the first half of the 1840s, along with string quartets, a piano quartet and quintet, and the concerto for piano and orchestra. But also in the 1840s, Schumann began to experience the emotional and physical disturbances that would only grow worse throughout the rest of his life. Increasingly and unhealthily obsessed with the inevitability of death, he often fell into nervous fits and suffered from what appears now to have been severe tinnitus. Still, Schumann continued to write and compose. He produced his 4th and final symphony, though numbered his 3rd, in 1851, and continued to experiment compositionally, having been intensely involved in large-scale vocal music with his single opera Genoveva in 1848, as well as the epically conceived, if only marginally successful, scenes from Goethe's Faust. The Schumanns met the young Johannes Brahms in 1853 and marveled at his already remarkable talent. But the end was near for Robert. His mental state declined even further, and in 1854 he attempted suicide by throwing himself into the icy Rhine River in the middle of winter. He was rescued before freezing to death and chose to commit himself to a sanatorium for the insane in Bonn, where he died 2 years later in 1856.